I'm going to start by providing a current overview of where we are with our fiscal year 25 budget. We had a budget subcommittee meeting
Today.
morning. Oh my goodness, that was today?
This morning.
That was
Yep.
today.
In which I had the opportunity, along with Ms. Sikor, our municipal and school budget director, and our Director of Human Resources, Anna Veras, joined us to review some things that we're watching very carefully in order to close out fiscal year 25, which is the current fiscal year, in the black. We have experienced, as you are well aware, from the very beginning of our fiscal year 25 budget, we were very, very tight. Just to remind folks that are not as familiar with this, back in June, we had $467,000 worth of salaries and positions that were added that were related to services that were agreed upon prior to the end of last school year, but after we had completed the budget. And in addition to that, we had our transportation costs that were well above what we had anticipated in the FY25 budget. So we started out very tight to begin with. The town subsequently, during the fall meeting, was able to allocate an additional $300,000, which helped us with our transportation costs that were skyrocketing and helped us to balance out our budget. As we have been going through the school year, there are several lines here that I'm showing you that are currently over budget. The first one is our educational contractual services. This line we use for many different types of things. It includes services for audiologists, as an example, folks that might come in and work with teachers on technology, augmentative devices. They also come in and work with us on some things having to do with professional development. One of the main reasons that we have such a large overage there is that 102,000 of that represents nursing staffing that we are required to provide. And because we were not able to hire through the traditional hiring process, we did do a search. It was unsuccessful. We ended up having to go through an agency, so we're also paying agency fees for that position. So out of that $211,279 that's over budget, 102,000 of that is specifically for one position that we're contracting through an agency. In addition to that, we have had a number of students that are under McKinney-Vento, meaning that they are without a permanent housing. And so under the Massachusetts law, we're required to provide transportation, and in several instances, that transportation is from other places that are quite far away. And so that budget was set, as it has been for many years, at $40,000. We were covering ourselves with $40,000, but this year our expenses have gone up because we have more students that are experiencing homelessness and more students that we're transporting. So that expense is actually projected to be $65,000 through the end of the school year. In addition, our utilities and facilities expenses, as we have talked about, and I'll remind folks that our electricity is out of control. The costs are not only for the cost of the actual energy, but also for the delivery of that energy. Everybody who's been watching the news knows that the governor has been working with the state legislature to help to balance out the costs of that delivery. Well, school districts are experiencing the same exact thing. And when you get a $100,000 bill for the month of January for the high school, a lot of that is, or half of it is for delivery and half of it is for electricity. So although we combined our gas And so we knew that when we opened the new high school, we were no longer going to be using gas. We were going to be all electric. So we took those accounts, combined them. We did our calculations based on what the engineers told us we needed for a number of kilowatt hours. We did the math. It simply was not enough. And in addition to that, construction is still taking place. It's taking place before school hours start. It's taking place after school hours finish. Up until about a month ago, it was happening overnight shifts until 2 in the morning. So that was drawing a lot of electricity as well. So most of this overage in the utilities and facilities is due to the exorbitant cost of electricity. In subsequent slides, I'll review some ideas that we have around trying to recoup some of this. Also, this past, actually week and a half ago, I received a letter from the Department of Education, Massachusetts Department of Education. It was a response to a PRS complaint which they had received back in August. When they received that, I believe the department reached out to us in late November, at which time I provided information that they had requested. Hadn't heard anything back from them up until about a week and a half ago, and I got a letter that is ordering, and that's the exact words from the Department of Education. It's not suggesting, it is ordering that we implement bus transportation for the remainder of the school year starting April 21st. For us, April 21st is actually a holiday and a vacation week. So for practical purposes, it would start April 28th. In addition to that, we are also ordered to provide the 85 or so families that live 2 or more miles from their current school reimbursement at 70 cents per mile, which is the state reimbursement rate. So we're going back and looking at that, and on average, at a minimum, if somebody lives 2 or more miles away, round trip is 4 miles at 70 cents a mile times 143 school days. That's a lot of reimbursement. To the tune of close to $50,000 or $60,000. So we're taking a very close look at this. We have to offer the reimbursement and have to show that we've made an effort to offer that. And then we have to show whether the parent or caregiver has opted to take it or not. And so that is going to add additional expense to get us through to the end of the school year. I want to clarify that this is totally different from the bus route that was reduced from the budget back in the last, for this fiscal year. That bus was specifically put into place for students that were attending Robin Hood and South School and who at the time either had to cross Route 28 or other busy intersections. Many of those students never met the threshold for the 2 or more miles. So this is not the same route. This is a completely different thing that we're looking at. So I've been drafting letters this week that are going to be going out to families who may qualify for this, and we have to figure out how many would be opting in or opting out, but we have to offer the bus service. Even if it's one family that says they want it, we have to offer it. We have to provide it under this order from the state. So add it all together, we are very close to being in the red by about $600,000. That said, if you can call this, I wouldn't call it good news, but I would call it ways that we're going to try to address this without having to lay anybody off. One of the first things that we're looking at, I skipped a slide here, is freezing all hiring immediately. So that would mean, for example, any resignation that might come in or any current vacancy that we have, we're not going to fill. And we believe that we would anticipate a $40,000 savings by not filling vacancies. In addition, there was a small adjustment that happens every year for school districts where the state comes out with updated numbers for Title I. I reapplied for that. It's a small amount, but it's $5,500 that I'm going to put toward the homeless transportation because that's allowable under Title I. We're also completely drawing down our grants to zero for 2 special education grants. One is called, I don't know the actual names except I know the numbers, the 240 and the 262 grants.
So the 240 grant is the IDEA for special education, and the 262 is the early education for preschool.
Thank you. And we're going to use the $25,000 for an allowable expense toward a speech and language pathologist position instead of taking from operating budget. And then the other 240 grant we're going to use towards some of those contractual service expenses that I mentioned before that are eligible under IDEA. IDEA has very strict regulations in how you can spend federal money, so it has to be for very specific purposes. And luckily, last year in FY25, I keep saying last year, this year for FY25, the governor's budget, you may recall, last year they had that $70 million that Governor Healy helped by putting towards school districts that needed what was called extraordinary relief. We were one of those districts that qualified because we spent more than 125% of what we had budgeted for special ed out of district tuitions. And we've used all of that money with the exception of $81,000. I do not feel comfortable, I just have to say it out loud, zeroing out the extraordinary relief budget because that's the only amount of money that we will have left if, for example, a student moves into district, if a student might be picked up for services that are going to require additional staffing or expense. By zeroing that out, we have nothing left to help us to the end of the school year. So this is sort of it's a calculated risk, but if we zero it down, I think we can avoid layoffs. And that's what we're really trying to do because really all of our expenses in the school budget, 87% of it is salary based, and there's nothing left. We already zeroed out all of our we froze all of our budgets back in October. And Leah went through and closed off all POs that had remaining invoices on them, and there's really not much to go by. The other $18,000, and you can see we're scrounging here. It's like trying to find pennies in the bottom of your car, but $18,000 is left in the substitute account. So for your edification, our substitute line in our operating budget is $250,000. We have already spent $232,000 of that $250,000. There's 18 remaining. I have to have a conversation with building principals tomorrow to talk about how we can manage without substitutes, which is a problem because on any given week, our payroll is in the range of $5,000 to $7,000 just for substitutes. So I'm going to be putting my name on a list probably to sub. And we're probably going to be looking for volunteers to help with coverage and things like that, but it's $18,000. So we're looking at that as an option. In addition, proposing to reduce our custodial daytime support, which would encompass a savings of about $28,000. I am looking at 2 custodial positions that are night positions right now by not hiring those, keeping those vacant. And the proposal here would be to take some of that daytime help and shift them into the evenings at the elementary schools. And the savings is basically by not hiring the night help, we're basically taking away from the day help in order to balance out so we have some night cleaning that's going to happen. That will save us an additional $28,000. We also have $52,000 remaining in our services for landscaping. I'm proposing cutting that in half back down to $25,000. This would essentially mean that we would really just focus in on the high school and making sure that the high school is green and beautiful and ready for graduation. It would mean that our winter cleanups, that we would have leaves and things that may not be picked up in a timely manner. We will likely be reaching out for volunteers to see if we can do some kind of a community cleanup. That would save us about $25,000. And then, let's see, the next one here, Ms. Sikora and I were both surprised actually that we received a comprehensive school health grant this year, because originally we were not anticipating that. And we were literally just told within the last couple of weeks. So what we're going to look to do is use $10,000 from that grant to help subsidize the cost of nursing staff. So if you add those things up, that gets us to just over $300,000 with a remaining maximum liability of just under $280,000. Here are the unknowns. Right now, we're nearing zero on our legal expenses, and we have a lot of legal expenses happening right now. Between collective bargaining and other things that we're working on, I'm anticipating that may be going in the red by about $20,000. That's why you're showing that as a negative. I have a special education there as an unknown. Currently, we're waiting for the state to get back to us on a determination that they need to make with regard to the district's liability for cost of an out-of-district placement. If it is found that that the district is not responsible for that, then $50,000 would be coming back to the district. But again, that's an unknown right now. We're also looking to potentially charge a certain percentage of our utility and facility costs to the cafeteria revolving account. Now, this is a little more complicated because the cafeteria revolving account can only be used for things that are relative to food services and, such as salaries and things like that. However, we're going through an audit right now with the state, the National School Lunch Program. They're going to be providing us guidance to find out if we have the ability to charge some of our utilities to that account. So we don't know yet. So that's up in the air. That's why that's up there as an unknown. If we can, we think we'd be eligible for $250,000 of utilities. And then finally, we need to have a bit of a buffer. This has been a big year for FMLA leaves and leaves of absence, medical leaves, and so on. We also have had staff that have been out for workers' comp, that have been injured, and so on. So we are actually over budget both in the unemployment line, and that's by about $20,000. And then with FMLA and the number of leaves that we've had, it's cost the district more than we anticipated. Again, in a typical year, if I can even use the word typical anymore, because it doesn't feel like there's any more typical, there would be some funds that we could move here or there. But we've been so tight that there just simply is not much left. And so this is where we're at. If things work in our favor, if we're able to charge some of this stuff to CAF revolving, if we get this funding back that perhaps we might not be responsible for, that could put us in best case scenario in the black with a $5,000 balance at the end of the year. Worst case scenario, we're looking at being in the red by about $280,000. So it's really too early to definitively say. but I wanted to give you the heads up so that there was no surprise or shock if come mid-May, we're going to have a much better sense of where we are landing on some of these things, and we have to have a balanced budget to end our fiscal year. So it is a gamble, because if I was going to play it safe, I would say we would probably need to look at finding $300,000 worth of other things to reduce, which would essentially mean people. But if I did that, and then we find out that, you know what, we can actually cover these costs, then we've laid people off and have no recourse. And it's not a good thing to do at all for kids. It's not a good thing to do for our employees. So that is the current fiscal reality for closing out our FY25 budget. Anything to add, Ms. Sikora?
Other than we keep looking every week within the AP side, the accounts payable side, as well as the payroll side, to just make sure that we're within, everyone has what they need, and make sure that everything, the paperwork's in order before anything is paid out. We are checking everything with a fine-tooth comb and making sure your cash balance is always in a positive reflection.
Leah, can I just ask a question in terms of the energy and utility costs? Where are we at with the reimbursement from Consigli? Because some of that stuff we were looking to recoup for the
Yes.
nights.
So right now it is with the, with our attorney Galvin and with Consigli.
So is that like possible that we're going to get that in time to kind of recoup some of this before we?
This is actually not, it's part of the utility costs, but it's not something we would, those bills that they owe us are not something that they could pay us for. That's more like they need to pay the
Because they're still
Eversource bill.
sitting as not paid from us, right?
Correct.
We haven't already paid it.
We have not paid
Okay.
that out yet, so that's already encumbered and already taken care of.
Okay.
These are other, facilities and utility costs that are aside from the high school.
Okay.
The maintenance of buildings, as well as the
We
facility.
had 2 floods that happened. There was a $25,000 deductible on one of them. There's just under $25,000 of costs in the other. That was $50,000. We had another issue with our elevator here at the middle school that had to be fixed. That was just under $10,000. I mean, the costs they're just creeping up all the time. We had to spend $20,000 over the February break. Actually, I think it was more than that. It was closer to $25,000 on the Robin Hood School electrical. All the outlets had to be redone because they were melting. They had not been done appropriately, from what I'm told, from when the building was reconstructed 23 years ago. So we had to put that expense up. That was a fire hazard. So these are the kind of things that we're talking about. We're not talking about mismanagement of funds. These are things that come up within the budget and that we literally do not have control over. And in past years, we would have had, in a year when we know we have aging buildings, or we had an aging roof, or we've got aging systems, we would squirrel money away and say, we've got this account so that when something goes wrong, we can take from it. But we haven't been able to do that because we basically zeroed all those accounts out in order to get our balanced budget. And now it's creeping back up on us again because the things are coming up and we don't have any place now to pull from.
So, and I know you said it, Dave, but I just want to make it absolutely clear for the public. We have tried for years to put rainy day funds in place. I know we're going to be talking about user fees later tonight too in the agenda. That is also a place we've tried to. And these rainy day funds, it's been pouring for years. And now it's a monsoon. So now we have, as you said, we have nothing left. The fact that it is March and we are literally having a conversation about whether we're going to mow lawns or just let it grow is absolutely crazy. The fact that and don't get me wrong, I love the idea of you guys. I love the idea of us back in the COVID days when we would sign up to substitute. That is not a long-term solution. That's a solution for, you know, hey, it's a crazy day in the district and perfect storm. We need, you know, Catherine, we need Dave to go over and cover a classroom. We need one of us to do that. If we're doing that, we're not doing our actual jobs. And the fact that it is March and we don't have any money left for substitutes is crazy. The fact that I just want to make it known, because I see a lot on social media, and especially this year with the budget cuts. We have made it work, and we have made it work, and we have made it work. And I know we have said this over and over and over again. We can't make it work anymore. We are past the bone. We are amputating at this point. It is March. In all my years being on this committee, we have always at least made it through. We had nothing, I mean, we zeroed out at the end, but we made it through. It is March. I don't know how we make it through. And I, like you, am very afraid that if we, you know, $81,000 left in our extraordinary relief, and it's March. We know for a fact we've had students be placed that have had significant needs that we've had to hire without. And we all know our salaries are not up to par, so we have to hire agencies because we have to provide these services.
It's a catch-22. All of this is connected. And
But I will say, I agree with you. I'm scared about doing it. We don't have a choice, because the alternative, we cannot lay off people with 3 months to go in this school year. That is not fair to these kids. And it's going to make, you know, services we need and everything else even worse. And it's going to kick the can down the road. So I think, unfortunately, we have to zero out these accounts. You know, I hate it, but the alternative is worse.
Yeah, I agree. We talked about this today in our budget subcommittee, and it was like, I can't believe we're talking about mid-year layoffs. You know, it's always next year. You know, we might not have enough money next year, but now it's this year, right in the middle of the year, and you're talking about trying to minimize student-facing cuts, right? Well, the kids are going to feel that if all of a sudden their, you know, ABA tech's gone, or this, you know, service provider's gone. They're going to notice the grass isn't cut either, but it's, you know, less of an impact. You know, if you live on Oak Street and you have a tractor mower, please come mow the lawn. You know, people are looking for ways to help us. We might need the community to help us mow the grass. Like, it's absurd to say, but that's our option, right? We don't want to lay off people, so we have to find it from somewhere.
We want to maintain our buildings, yet we don't have a choice but to reduce our custodial services and go from cleaning our buildings. We can't even do that. So, I mean, talking about if God forbid, another flood happens, or an elevator breaks, or, you know, just general maintenance, I mean, we can't clean. I'm not looking for a response. I think over the last few months, you know, we've known, especially this group, we've known, and we've seen how hard it is. And this is just absolutely so disheartening to see that I don't even know if we will make it till the end of the year. So, I know you have some next steps.
yes, next steps,
Skip that one. Yeah.
skip that for now. So just to really summarize here is that, as I started saying before, it's a hard freeze on hiring, effective immediately. Any current vacancies right now will be scrutinized, and we'll have to pass a very high bar if we're going to need to hire any additional positions at this point. We're going to be reducing custodial daytime supports in order to help balance out. We have vacancies that I'm not going to hire for the night positions at 2 of our elementary schools. And so I'm going to try to balance that out so we can still get some cleaning done, but not have to hire for 2 vacancies. We are going to be looking at reducing our landscaping contractual services line and essentially trying to focus in on really one building. Essentially, the building that everybody is going to be coming to for graduation in a couple of months. That means that our other buildings are going to be needing some help. We're going to be looking at reducing our substitute teachers and finding creative ways to cover our classrooms. Unfortunately, I had budgeted buses for the annual senior walkthrough parade, but those are expenses that I can't justify being able to pick up this year based on where we are currently. And then, as Leah mentioned, we're monitoring pretty much on a daily basis where we are with our expenses. Any POs that come through, I have been turning them down. Essentially, I had a request as recently as a couple weeks ago for paper. I had a request for copiers. These are things that I'm now having to go to Leah and saying, where can we find money to help fund these kind of things? Because we're at a point where we're zeroed out. That's all I had on the FY25. The only other additional information.
Can I ask one question really quickly?
Yeah.
In grand scheme of things, I know in the grand scheme of things, it is not a huge priority, but it has become such a wonderful tradition. How much are the buses for the senior walkthrough parade?
They're $4,000.
Okay. So we need $4,000 for buses. We need lawn mowing. We need cleaning. So
Need substitutes.
we need substitutes. I'm gonna put it out there. We need these things, and we hear all the time from the community that there are people who want to volunteer their time. This is what we need. So, this is a call to the community. These are some of the things that we could use help with to get us through and hopefully make it to June 30th. Danny, did you have something to say?
Oh, it was just, you could maybe ask the senior class to pay for the buses. I'm just looking at the price layout there, and it's not terrible. I do think the senior walkthrough parade is very important, but of course, what are you gonna do?
No, I do too, Danny, and I do too. I think it's
I think it's important.
I think it's
I mean,
important.
it can't come from the school budget.
No.
I mean, we know it can't come from there, but there's got to be a way to make it happen, Another funding source,
I'm just crying 'cause
generous
this
community
beautiful
member.
child just said, can they pay for their own thing? That's horrible. Sorry.
Generous donors. You're out there.
Yeah.
We're allowed to accept gifts on behalf of the school department.
Yep. Okay.
The only other addition that I had here was to give you an update on the athletics
Do
revolving
the
account.
FY26, and we'll cover that on user fees.
Okay, thanks. All right, so I'm going to skip that.
Go
We're going
to
to go into
26.
FY.
Unless you have more questions on 25.
So do we need, the budget subcommittee, we peppered Dave and Leo with lots of questions.
Yeah.
We're like, are you sure? There's really nowhere else you can take this stuff from. There's nowhere. So, I would make a motion to support the superintendent's plan to cut, cut costs for FY25.
Yeah, do we need to do that right
would
now?
you
Because
like
they're
us to
not
do that?
line item
They're
changes
not line
right
item
now.
changes.
We're not
No.
moving
Yeah.
anything around? Okay.
No,
Then I
not
withdraw
payroll
the
to
motion.
non-payroll.
I will just say, I don't think there's anywhere else it comes from. So.
So just reviewing FY '26, and again, it's here to keep the conversation going. There have really been no changes. I continue to look at this. It's never done. The FY26 budget is, we're constantly trying to look and figure things out, and now we're looking at needing to add a bus for FY26. So that's going to be another expense that is not accounted for in these current list of reductions. So I need to go back now and figure out another $100,000+ because we know that we're going to need to have a bus next year.
But
So,
also too, it's a tiered effect. Everything, if the state comes down and says that the mandate for that tuition this year is not something as our obligation, that does affect FY26 as well and going forward. So we will be diving into the FY26 budget to see if any impacts have changed with the recent, information that we do have and when we do get updated information as well.
So that will still be forthcoming. We have to identify, those potential change in funds. We're still looking at an overall reduction of 27 certified staff positions, 12 non-certified staff positions, and then additional reductions to athletic supplies and technology. These are just the lists here for as it currently stands, but I also want to remind folks that there are several things at play here. Obviously, the most important one being April 1st and the outcome of the ballot vote. Pending what happens there, no matter what, we're going to be having a lot of discussion. And I believe that's something that we're probably going to want to add additional time for school committee to be able to debate pending the outcome of the override. And once that override vote happens, we then also have Maytown meeting, which appropriates the funds. And that's really sort of the final stamp on moving forward with our budget. Before town meeting, however, this committee needs to vote on a line item appropriated budget. So we're going to need to really continue to think about, if this override doesn't pass, how the committee is going to want to debate the final lists here.
So, just for knowledge of the community, we requested today that the school committee hold April 3rd and April 17th as potential meeting dates. I think April 3rd will be happening regardless. And we do have a meeting scheduled for April 10th. That will most likely happen as well. And we will see about the 17th because though we are working on this right now, we will have more guidance when we know what happens after April 1st.
Did you have anything to add, Ms. Sikor?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you both. I think we all know how hard this was, and we know how you have been working on this minute by minute, all day, every day, a lot of sleepless nights, and we do appreciate the work you're doing for this.
Thank you.
So I know we still have time with the line item budget, but it still pains me that program of studies is out there with not all the classes that we want to be on it. Danny, I don't know if you have a sense of what it's like for kids registering for classes right now, because you're a senior and they're probably not having you do it, but is it clear that it's preliminary and we don't know if some of these things are coming up?
It's very clear that the things aren't set in stone yet, but it is causing a lot of do I have to create two schedules in my head? I've talked to this guidance counselor. What am I going to do about, say, AP Italian? Should I take Spanish 1? Should I go back? Should I skip AP Italian? Should I try to take AP Italian dual enrollment? Is sort of a lot of questions. And that's, of course, just from the junior class, not even from the freshmen coming up with current 8th graders. And you figure out, as I enter into this building, what's going to be there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that, I mean, we'll talk April, I guess, in April, but I think that at some point, the committee should really start thinking about, even if this thing doesn't pass, you know, are those things definitely gone? I don't think we have said that yet, right? If there, you know, some things might come back, so, but then other things go away, right? So we don't know what those things are
Right.
yet, but.
I mean, I know and I've said it last meeting, I really, at a minimum, want to find a way to phase out the French and Italian. I also think if we are phasing it out, it needs to come out of the middle school. Which I know that creates a whole host of issues for scheduling at the middle school, because we still have to offer something for the way of the schedule to work, but it's like a tease. Like, here you go, you can take French and Italian up until 8th grade, and oh, by the way, then once you get there, you only get to take Spanish. And I really hate the idea of these kids who, you know, it's hindering them from the ability to take the possible AP exam. It's hindering the ability to possibly get the seal of biliteracy. This has real effects. I will tell you, my own child texted me the other day, and I saw a couple other parents who said the same thing. She's going to be a junior. She's supposed to be in Italian 4. Does she start over with Spanish?
Or how about the one we saw,
Yeah.
a child that's going to be a senior and asked their parent, you know, they're in Italian, do I take Spanish 1 instead of?
My senior year,
Right,
do I take
Italian
another
AP?
class? What do I do?
It's gross. It's really, it's heart-wrenching. Our kids deserve so much better.
It's also too, I mean,
And our staff.
the past few days, seeing, you know, having the SELC and high school connected, and that the whole thought process was that child development class. And I had the opportunity while we were doing superintendent finalist tours to see the you know, high schoolers working in the SELC, and the fact that that's going to be cut, the fact that the health curriculum, which is a state mandate,
And a graduation requirement.
yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
I think we definitely have,
We have a lot to talk about.
yeah. So,
We just want to add a bunch of meetings so we can spend more time with Danny before he graduates.
yes, yes. We can't make Betty stay for those ones, but we can make Danny come. So, okay. Policy updates?
Oh, there's a time for that.
Or, you know what, can I ask that we move the user fee up? We're talking about money, let's get it all done at once.
Makes sense.
Okay. So,
Dave, could you put up that one slide for athletics?
Yes.
Thank you.
so I know, there have, as you guys know, every year, the past few years, you know, I have worked with Leah and Mr. Pignoni and Drama and things like that to take a look at our user fees. As you know, I think it was last year, for the very first time, we increased the family cap. But given that we didn't have fields and things like that, we weren't going to increase our athletic user fees. We are not in the position to finalize or make any recommendation on user fees right now. This is also something that we have to kind of wait and see with where we're at. But I did want to have a quick recap of what's going on. One of the things we hear a lot about with the potential cut of 40% to the athletics budget is, but we pay for athletics, so why are we cutting it? So I did want to be able to show, and this is just a synopsis, but we do have full broken down by program, that $300 user fee, with the $1,200 family cap subsidizes, because there are a lot more costs that go into it. So, Leah, I will let Leah take over from here.
So I tried to do something very basic for you. I wanted to show you just the two buckets. There's the income and the expenses. And what the athletic department did for me is they broke it down into fall, winter, spring, and summer clinics. So you'll notice that the spring income is up to date, and the summer clinics are what was last year. So because this is a revolving account, this isn't an operational budget. This does flow like a savings account within the bank account. So you'll notice that this year they brought in $283,106.92. That could go up for anyone else that is going to be making their spring payments. We also have a expense for spring at $91,444.12. That is an estimate at this moment, but our best guess as from last year. So if you take the two together, you'll notice that we are about $12,000 off. And that account balance to the right is what we have for cash balance in the athletic account right now. So we could basically draw from that account balance that $12,000 that we are short. So starting in July 1 of 2025, you'll probably see a $50,000 balance.
Okay. And I just, for edification, I would like to make the point that the summer clinics were supposed to be, what they were designed or initially set up to do was to be a maintenance account. We started depositing that into a maintenance account, or the thought was we were, when the high school build started, because, 3 turf fields, it's, grass, as we just talked about, if you don't mow it, you don't mow it. Turf fields, if we don't upkeep those the way we need to, you can't play on it, and it becomes obsolete. And yes, the day-to-day maintenance on the turf fields is not as much as, a grass field. But the overall life of it, when it needs to be redone, is significantly more expensive than sod.
10-year cycle.
It
and
is.
We really should be on $100,000 a year. We should be putting into this account.
Yep.
Because in 10 years, it's going to cost us $1 million to redo the
Times
turf.
3.
Times 3,
Sorry, yes,
right.
thank you, $3 million.
Yeah.
Right.
It's a heavy cost over a long period of time.
Right.
So we have to start saving now.
Can I also add that the school committee did not support 3 turf fields when that came up? Like, because I've seen things like on the community pages and things like that, and not that we should pay attention to social media, but that is a question that comes up a lot. Like, why did we put in 3 turf? That was not, the school committee did not support 3 turf fields.
And not because we didn't want it. I would like to make
Yes,
that
I'm
point.
sorry.
But
it
we
was
did
because of maintenance.
It was because of the maintenance, and we
We were cutting teachers then.
We knew
and
at
we
the
talked
time,
about
yeah.
that, each year, at the time, I think we were talking about $70,000 a year to have to put away. That was a teacher or 2 teachers. And that is why we did not recommend or did not support 3 turf fields when the building was being built.
Right. That being said, the fields are going in. They're going to be wonderful. They're going to be used. But what we did in order to plan ahead and try and be responsible was when we were setting up the clinics, the athletic clinics, this year there is supposed to be a drama clinic, things like that, was those funds were going to, just like our rental fees and our user fees and things like that, that is supposed to go to maintenance so that we can be able to replace these fields and have, that rainy day fund. But the last several years, even though we started doing that, we've had to minimize or mitigate some of the burden on the cuts for athletics. We've said, okay, here.
All of that, anything that's coming in for clinics is being used to subsidize costs for the athletics budget right now, instead of putting it into that savings account.
Correct.
I said it earlier, our rainy day funds we've been using because it's been pouring and now it's monsooning. And I'm sorry to keep repeating myself and harping on that, but I think it's really, really important for the public to know that. So, we do have specifics, and if you look ultimately line by line, I think actually, I think the expenses may go up, and that's one of those things. Like, this is where we stand right now.
Today,
Yeah, today.
with good estimates, as best as possible.
Yeah, but
And I need to say that with athletics, we have been saving a lot because we were thoughtful about purchasing the Sparty buses. And it has saved us tens of thousands of dollars by purchasing those. We still need a yellow bus every once and again, but if at some point we ever get to that realm where we can start looking at really minimizing our transportation costs, we would need another Sparty bus in order to really avoid, to send a team, a large team, like football as an example, or drama with all their equipment. Right now, they either have to get a U-Haul, which I think recently happened,
Yeah.
because we couldn't fit everything into a Sparty bus. But that would be a capital, something that, it's an investment, right? We've had these discussions before about if we're going to invest, we should invest wisely in things that are going to help us to save money down the long run. And that's one of the investments that I would recommend down the road.
Is another Sparty bus?
Yeah.
because I believe right now, Seem Collaborative also helps out and
They do it
We're
We're very
well,
fortunate.
yes.
We are very fortunate that we have a great relationship with the collaborative, and on many occasions, we have borrowed their 15-seaters in order to avoid having to rent a large school bus,
While we're on
which that could end at any moment.
yeah.
That's not a guarantee.
while we're on that bus, I know we talked about this in the last agenda item, but is that something that we could look at in terms of if we were to bring a bus in-house and how much that would cost versus the transportation cost of $100,000 a year? Or, I mean, I don't know how many kids that are going to opt in, but while we're talking about the Sparty and the investment, maybe it's worth
Yeah, we
seeing.
can
I mean,
certainly do an analysis on that. There's considerations when it comes, into thinking about insurance, and then the cost to maintain, and then
Staff.
staffing, certifications, any kind of transportation you provide has to be inspected by the state and to the Department of Transportation. So you start getting into a lot of administrivia-heavy tasks and regulation.
Yeah, it seems like they just have no monitoring, like, I know
Yeah.
we talked about this before, but the fact that they can just
Yeah.
keep raising.
Well, we're still trying to, it would be, the transportation we are looking at would be a yellow school bus.
Yep.
And we would have to actually go out to bid for that. So we would get some competitive pricing, but we're still trying to even unpack just the communication we received and the routes and what we really need to dig into this as much as
I
possible.
mean, today, we're looking at maps.
Yeah,
like,
street map.
I'm sitting there with a PDF of a map that we got from the DPW, and we're trying to figure out how to create a map because we don't have anyone else to do it.
Yeah.
So we're doing this by hand and trying to make sure that it's as efficient as possible. It's likely that we're going to kind of do like depot type style of pickups and drop-off locations. But the point I'm trying to make is that there isn't a particular person that has that responsibility. So we're trying to minimize cost and figuring
Right,
it out.
districts that have busing have transportation coordinators to do it,
Correct.
right? We don't have that.
No.